They thought she was just a housekeeper with a ring. Mark Vance thought he had married a woman with no spine, no money, and no future without him. And his mistress Jessica made the fatal mistake of laughing in her face and calling her a nobody in front of the city's elite. But they forgot one rule of the jungle: the most dangerous predators move in silence. They didn't know that the phone call she just made didn't go to a divorce lawyer, it went to the head of the Sterling dynasty. The private jets are already in the air. The nobody is about to introduce her real family, and by midnight Mark and Jessica won't just be unemployed, they'll be erased. The rain in Seattle was relentless, hammering against the floor-to-ceiling windows of the penthouse like handfuls of gravel. Inside, the silence was suffocating. Mina Vance knelt on the cold Italian marble floor of the foyer, picking up the shards of a vase. It wasn't just any vase. It was a Ming Dynasty replica, something her husband Mark had bought to impress his business partners. He had knocked it over in a fit of rage 5 minutes ago because his gray tie wasn't perfectly pressed. "You're useless, Mina," Mark had sneered, adjusting his Brioni suit jacket in the hallway mirror. "I have the merger of the century tonight at the St. Regis, and you can't even manage basic laundry. I don't know why I drag you along to these things." Mina didn't look up. She focused on a jagged piece of blue porcelain. "I'm sorry, Mark. The dry cleaners were closed early due to the storm." "Excuses," he spat. He checked his Patek Philippe watch, a gift she had bought him 3 years ago using her allowance, though he never asked where the money really came from. "Just get dressed. Wear that beige thing. And for God's sake, don't speak unless spoken to. The investors from the Alden Group are going to be there. I need to look like a man in control, not a babysitter." Mina stood up, her knees aching. She was 26, but tonight she felt 50. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a severe, simple bun, and her face was devoid of makeup. This was how Mark liked her, plain, invisible, a backdrop to his shining brilliance. To the outside world, Mark Vance was the CEO of Vance Tech, a rising star in the cybersecurity world. To Mina, he was the man who had slowly, methodically stripped away her confidence over 4 years of marriage. "I'll be ready in 10 minutes, she whispered. Mark didn't answer. He was already typing furiously on his phone, a smirk playing on his lips. Mina knew that smile. It wasn't for business. It was for her. Jessica Thorne. Mina had known for 6 months. It started with the smell of Baccarat Rouge 540 on his shirts, a perfume Mina never wore. Then came the late nights at the office, the business trips to Aspen, and the receipts for jewelry that never appeared on Mina's nightstand. Jessica was Mark's new VP of marketing. She was 23, hungry and stunning in a way that screamed for attention. She was everything Mina was currently pretending not to be. As Mina walked into her dressing room, she looked at the reflection in the mirror. The beige thing Mark wanted her to wear hung on the door. It was frumpy, ill-fitting, a costume for a doormat. She reached for her phone, a burner she kept hidden inside a hollowed-out book on the shelf. There was one unread message from a number listed only as A. Message: "Grandmother is asking why you missed Sunday tea. The board is getting restless, L. How long are you going to play house with this peasant? It's been 4 years." Mina's thumb hovered over the screen. She typed back, "Just a little longer. He's close to signing the Alden deal. Once he thinks he's won, I can leave without him claiming half my trust fund." She deleted the message immediately. She put on the beige dress. She pinned her hair tighter. She looked at the woman in the mirror, the woman Mark Vance thought was a poor orphan from a small town in Ohio. "Showtime," she breathed. Downstairs, Mark was waiting in the back of the town car. As she slid in, avoiding his gaze, he didn't even acknowledge her. He was on a video call. "Yes, Jessica, the presentation is loaded." "Good." Mark's voice dropped an octave, becoming husky. "And the red dress, good. You're going to knock them dead tonight. You're the real star of this company." He didn't care that Mina was sitting right there. In his mind, she was furniture. The car glided through the rain-slicked streets toward the St. Regis Hotel. Mina looked out the window, watching the city blur. Tonight was the night. She could feel it. The tension in Mark's jaw, the arrogance radiating off him like heat. He was planning something. She just hoped she could survive it without breaking character. Because if the sterling blood inside her veins boiled over if she let the mask slip, this city wouldn't just witness a divorce. They would witness a massacre. The ballroom of the St. Regis was dripping in gold and crystal. Waiters in white tuxedo jackets moved like ghosts through the crowd offering trays of champagne and caviar. The air smelled of expensive perfume and old money, or at least the desperate attempt to look like old money. Mina stood by a pillar near the entrance clutching a glass of sparkling water. Mark had abandoned her the moment they walked through the double doors, making a beeline for the bar where a group of investors was laughing loudly. And there she was. Jessica Thorne stood in the center of the room, and she was impossible to miss. She was wearing a custom crimson gown that clung to every curve with a slit that went dangerously high up her thigh. Her dark hair cascaded in loose waves over her shoulders, and her lips were painted a deep blood red. She looked predatory, triumphant. Mina watched as Mark approached Jessica. He didn't touch her, not openly, but the way he leaned and the way he whispered something that made her throw her head back and laugh was more intimate than a kiss. They looked like the power couple of the evening. Mina looked like the hired help. Sad, isn't it? Mina turned. A woman in emerald green, the wife of a rival tech CEO, was standing there eyeing Mina with pity. "What is?" Mina asked, her voice soft. "Everyone knows," the woman whispered, leaning in behind her fan. "Mark and the marketing girl. They aren't even trying to hide it anymore. Honestly, honey, you should have married a plumber. At least he'd come home at night." The woman patted Mina's arm condescendingly and walked away. Mina felt a cold knot tighten in her stomach. It wasn't heartbreak that had burned out years ago. It was humiliation. Pure, unadulterated disrespect. She decided to go to the buffet. She needed to do something with her hands. As she reached for a silver pair of tongs to pick up a canapé, a shadow fell over her. "Excuse me," a sharp voice said. "You're blocking the crab cakes." Mina looked up. It was Jessica. Up close, the woman was even more striking, but her eyes were cold, hard flint. "Hello, Jessica," Mina said politely, stepping aside. Jessica didn't move to get the food. Instead, she turned fully toward Mina, swirling her glass of red wine, a 2015 Opus 1, that cost more than Mark claimed to spend on groceries in a month. "I didn't think you'd actually come," Jessica said, her voice loud enough for the nearby circle of people to hear. "Mark said you get anxious at these events because you don't really fit in." Mina straightened her spine just a fraction. "I'm here to support my husband." Jessica scoffed, a cruel, ugly sound. "Husband. Right. You know he talks about you. He says living with you is like living with a ghost. No passion, no ambition, just beige." She flicked her eyes up and down Mina's dress. "I think you've had too much to drink, Jessica," Mina said quietly. Jessica stepped closer, her smile sharp. "Mark is a visionary," she hissed. "He deserves a queen, not a charity case he dragged home out of pity." Nearby conversations faded, heads turned, the air shifted. "I suggest you walk away," Mina said quietly, yet her voice carried a cold authority that didn't belong to a submissive housewife. It belonged to a sterling. Jessica blinked, startled, then sneered. "Or what? You'll cry." With a deliberate twist of her wrist, she tipped her wine glass. A splash of red struck Mina's beige dress like a wound. The ballroom froze. Jessica gasped theatrically. "Oh no, I'm so clumsy." "But Mina, honestly, you really shouldn't stand so close. You're always in the way." Mark appeared, fury already burning. He looked at Jessica, clinging to his arm, then at his wife, dripping with wine. "What happened?" he demanded. "She bumped into me." "Mark?" Jessica whimpered. "I think she did it on purpose." Mark rounded on Mina. "What is wrong with you? First you show up looking like a mess, and now you're ruining Jessica's dress." "She spilled it on me," Mina said steadily. though her hands trembled from restraint, not fear. "Don't lie," Mark snapped. "Jessica is the guest of honor. You are just embarrassing." He turned to the crowd. "My wife isn't feeling well. She's hysterical." Then to Mina, "Get out. Bathroom or car. I don't care. Just go. I can't look at you." Behind him, Jessica mouthed one word. "Nobody." Mina glanced at her stained dress, at the watching crowd, at her husband's disgust. Something inside her broke and something far older rose. "You want me to leave?" she said, voice like a blade. "I said get out, fine." She dropped her silk handkerchief onto Mark's polished shoe. "Remember this moment. You'll regret choosing her over me." She walked through the ballroom, out the doors, and straight into the Seattle rain. From her clutch, she pulled a burner phone. "It's Mina," she said, when security answered. "Warm up the jet. Bring the lawyers. All of them." "Is protocol active?" the voice asked. Mina looked back at the glowing hotel. "Yes. Initiate Protocol 0. Then look up, ma'am." Mina lifted her gaze. Cutting through the storm clouds, the lights of a helicopter appeared descending rapidly toward the hotel's rooftop helipad. On the side, illuminated by the lightning, was the crest that Mark Vance had never seen but would soon learn to fear, a silver lion holding a sword. The Sterling clan had arrived. The wind from the rotor blades whipped Mina's hair around her face, stinging her cheeks, but she didn't flinch. For the first time in 4 years, she felt something other than fear or submission. She felt power. The black helicopter touched down on the St. Regis helipad with the grace of a predatory bird. The door slid open before the skids even settled completely. 2 men in tactical suits jumped out first, securing the perimeter with practiced efficiency. Then a figure stepped out from the dark cabin. He was tall, wearing a charcoal wool coat over a tuxedo that cost more than the average American home. His face was sharp, angular, and currently twisted into a mask of cold fury. Alexander Sterling, the Iron Duke of Wall Street, and Mina's older brother. He didn't run to her. Sterling's didn't run, but he closed the distance with long, terrifying strides. He stopped 3 feet away, his steel-gray eyes sweeping over her. He saw the cheap, wine-stained beige dress. He saw the lack of jewelry. He saw the red rimming her eyes. "You look like a servant," Alexander said, his voice low and vibrating with anger. "Is this how he kept you, like a peasant?" "It was part of the deal, Xander," Mina replied, her voice steady. "I wanted to know if he loved me for me. I wanted to be sure." "And?" Alexander gestured to the stain on her chest. "Are you sure now?" "I'm sure," Mina said. "Burn it down, Xander. Burn it all down." Alexander nodded once. He snapped his fingers. A third man stepped out of the helicopter. This was Sebastian Cole, the family's consigliere, a lawyer so ruthless he was rumored to have made a Supreme Court justice cry during a deposition. He was carrying a silver briefcase and a garment bag. "The papers are drafted, Miss Sterling," Sebastian said, his voice smooth as oil. "The acquisition of Vance Tech's outstanding debt was completed 3 minutes ago. We own his loans. We own his mortgage. Technically, we even own the car he drove here tonight." "Good," Mina said. "And?" Sebastian held up the garment bag. "Grandmother insisted. She said if you are going to end a marriage, you should look like a widow who just inherited the empire." Mina took the bag. "Give me 10 minutes. You have 5, Alexander said, checking his watch. "The board of directors is watching via satellite. They want to see the stock price drop in real time." Mina stepped into the private VIP suite adjacent to the helipad reserved for high-profile guests. The 2 bodyguards stood outside the door. Inside, she stripped off the beige dress and threw it into the trash can without a second glance. She opened the garment bag. It was a masterpiece. A vintage Alexander McQueen archival piece, black silk strapless with a structured bodice that looked like armor and a skirt that flowed like crude oil. It was severe, elegant, and incredibly expensive. She pulled her hair out of the tight bun, letting the blonde waves cascade down her back. She grabbed a lipstick from the vanity, a deep oxblood red. She applied it with precision. She opened the jewelry case Sebastian had left. Inside sat the sterling tears, a necklace of diamonds and sapphires that had belonged to her great-grandmother. It was worth $12 million. Mark had refused to buy her a $5 flower bouquet last week. She clasped the heavy cold stones around her neck. She looked in the mirror. Mina Vance, the mousy housewife, was dead. Staring back at her was Mina Sterling, heiress to a $40 billion fortune. She walked out of the suite. Alexander was waiting, smoking a thin cigarette. He threw it down and crushed it with his heel. "Ready?" he asked. "No." Mina said, a dark smile touching her lips. "I'm hungry." Down in the grand ballroom, the party was reaching its peak. The jazz band was playing a lively tune and champagne corks were popping. Mark Vance was in high spirits. He had just cornered Thomas Alden, the head of the Alden Group. "Thomas, listen," Mark said, leaning in, swirling his scotch. "The Q4 projections for Vance Tech are through the roof. If you sign the merger tonight, you're getting in on the ground floor of a unicorn. We're going to crush the competition." Thomas Alden, a portly man with a white mustache, looked interested. "It is tempting, Mark. Your cybersecurity protocols are solid. But I heard rumors about liquidity issues. Lies planted by rivals." Mark laughed, waving his hand dismissively. "My wife, well, you saw her earlier. She's a bit of a drain emotionally, but financially, I'm the king of the castle. I have full control." Jessica Thorne slithered up to Mark's side, draping her arm possessively through his. "He's a genius, Mr. Alden, and he needs partners who understand vision, not baggage." She giggled, clearly referencing Mina. "Well," Thomas Alden smiled. "If the financials hold up, I think we can make an announcement by midnight." Mark beamed. He raised his glass. "To the future." "To the future," Jessica echoed. Suddenly a strange sound cut through the room. It wasn't the music. It was the sound of phones. Not one phone. Hundreds. Simultaneously, pockets began to vibrate. Notification chimes pinged like hail on a tin roof. A low murmur of confusion rippled through the crowd. Thomas Alden frowned. He pulled out his phone. His eyes widened. "What is it?" Mark asked, confused. "My broker just sent an emergency alert," Thomas muttered. "Vance Tech stock. It's diving." "What?" Mark laughed nervously. "That's impossible. The markets are closed." "After hours trading," Thomas said, his face paling. "Someone is dumping massive blocks of shares. Millions of them. Mark, the price just dropped 12% in 30 seconds. "Who?" Mark demanded, grabbing his own phone. "Who has that kind of volume?" "It's not just the stock," a woman nearby whispered loudly to her husband. "Look at the news feed. The global bank just recalled Vance Tech's credit line. They're claiming breach of contract due to unstable leadership." "Unstable leadership," Mark screamed, his face turning red. "I am the leader!" Jessica looked at her phone, her thumb scrolling frantically. "Mark? Your credit cards. I just got a notification from the company account. It says card declined, frozen, fraud alert." "It's a glitch," Mark yelled, sweat beading on his forehead. "Everyone calm down. It's a system error. I'll call the bank right now." He dialed his private banker. It went straight to voicemail. The murmurs in the room grew louder. People were backing away from Mark and Jessica as if they were contagious. In the world of the elite, poverty was a disease, and Mark Vance was showing symptoms. Then the music stopped. The double doors at the top of the grand staircase, usually reserved for royalty or heads of state, swung open with a heavy thud. The room fell silent. Standing at the top of the stairs were 4 figures. 2 large security guards in suits that bulged with muscle. Between them stood a man who radiated terrifying authority, Alexander Sterling. A gasp went through the room. "Is that Thomas Alden whispered, dropping his glass. That's Alexander Sterling. He owns half of Europe. Mark froze. He knew the face from Forbes covers. Why was Alexander Sterling here? Was he the investor? Was he here to save Vance Tech? Hope surged in Mark's chest. He's here for me, Mark whispered to Jessica. He must have heard about the merger. If Sterling backs us, the bank error doesn't matter. We'll be billionaires, Jess. Mark straightened his tie, pushed Jessica slightly behind him, and took a step forward. He prepared his best smile. But Alexander didn't walk down alone. He turned slightly and offered his arm to the fourth figure. A woman stepped out from the shadows. She was wearing a black gown that seemed to swallow the light. Diamonds glittered at her throat like stars in a night sky. Her hair was a golden cascade, her posture regal, her face a mask of stunning cold beauty. It took the room a full 5 seconds to recognize her. "Is that," someone whispered, "is that the wife, the one with the wine stain?" "No," another voice replied. "That can't be her. Look at those diamonds. Those are the Sterling tears. They've been in the vault for 50 years. Mark squinted. He blinked. He took a step back, his legs hitting a chair. "Mina," he breathed. Mina didn't look at him. She took her brother's arm, and together they began to descend the staircase. The sound of her heels on the marble was the only sound in the room. Click, 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 like a countdown. They reached the bottom of the stairs, and the crowd parted like the Red Sea. No one dared to stand in their path. They walked straight up to Mark and Jessica. Mark tried to laugh, but it came out as a choke. "Mina, babe. Where did you get that dress? Did you rent it?" He looked at Alexander Sterling, his eyes darting nervously. "Mr. Sterling, sir, I don't know why my wife is bothering you. She's a bit confused." Alexander looked at Mark as if he were a cockroach on the sole of his shoe. He didn't speak. He just looked at Mina. Mina stepped forward. She stood toe-to-toe with Jessica. Jessica was trembling. Up close, the difference in quality was brutal. Jessica's red dress, which had seemed so expensive an hour ago, now looked cheap and garish next to Mina's couture. "You called me a nobody," Mina said softly. Her voice wasn't loud, but in the silent ballroom it carried to every corner. Jessica opened her mouth, but no words came out. "Allow me to introduce myself properly," Mina continued, turning to address the room. "My name is not Mina Vance. That was a temporary title I held while conducting a field study on the limits of human patience." She paused, letting the tension build. "My name," she said, raising her chin, "is Mina Catherine Sterling, majority shareholder of Sterling Global. And as of 5 minutes ago, the new owner of the St. Regis Hotel, the building you are currently standing in, and the debt holder of Vance Technologies." Mark's knees gave way. He actually grabbed the banquet table to hold himself up. "Sterling," he wheezed. You're a Sterling. And you," Mina looked at Mark, her eyes dead, "are trespassing on my property." Sebastian Cole, the lawyer, stepped forward, opening his silver briefcase. He pulled out a single sheet of paper and handed it to Mark. "What is this?" Mark stammered. "An eviction notice," Sebastian said cheerfully. "For your office, your apartment, and your car, since the company owned them and Ms. Sterling now owns the company. She has decided to liquidate assets." But we're married," Mark shouted, trying to find a lifeline. "I get half Washington as a community property state. I get half of your money." Mina laughed. It was a dark, rich sound that sent shivers down spines. "Oh, Mark," she said, shaking her head. "Do you remember the prenup you made me sign? The one you insisted on because you thought I was after your meager savings?" Mark went pale. He remembered. He had been so arrogant, so sure she was a gold digger, that he had his lawyer draft a brutal prenup stating that what is brought into the marriage remains separate and what is earned remains separate. "I signed it," Mina smiled. "And since I brought $40 billion into the marriage, And you brought debt. I think the math is quite simple. She turned to Jessica. And you, Mina said. Jessica shrank back. I didn't know. Mina, please. I was just doing my job. Your job was marketing VP, Mina said. Not husband thief, but don't worry, I have a special severance package for you. Mina snapped her fingers. One of the security guards stepped forward holding a box. It was a cardboard box. Inside were Jessica's personal items from her desk. You're fired, Mina said. Security will escort you out. Oh, and Jessica. Jessica looked up, tears streaming down her face, ruining her makeup. That wine stain. Mina pointed to her own chest, now covered by millions of dollars of diamonds. It washes out, but the reputation of being a homewrecker who tried to bully a sterling that stays forever. Good luck finding a job in this city. Or any city. Mina turned back to her brother. I'm bored now, Xander. Let's go get dinner. I'm craving Italian. Wait, Mark screamed, lunging for her. Mina, you can't do this. I love you. It was a mistake. The security guard intercepted him effortlessly, shoving him back. Mark fell onto the floor right where Mina had stood earlier. Mina stopped. She didn't turn around. She spoke over her shoulder. You didn't love me, Mark. You loved feeling superior to me. Enjoy the feeling of being superior to the rats in the alley, because that's where you're sleeping tonight. She walked away, her brother at her side, leaving Mark Vance kneeling in the debris of his life, while the entire city of Seattle watched in stunned silence. The rain had stopped, but the cold settled in sharp and bitter. Mark and Jessica sat in the only place that was open at 3:00 a.m. and didn't require a reservation, a fluorescent-lit, greasy spoon diner on the outskirts of the city. The contrast was jarring. 3 hours ago they were drinking vintage wine at the St. Regis. Now they were staring at chipped mugs of lukewarm coffee. Mark's tuxedo was rumpled, the tie undone. Jessica's red dress, once a statement of power, now looked ridiculous against the cracked vinyl booth. She was shivering, wrapped in Mark's suit jacket, her makeup smeared. My cards are dead, Jessica whispered, staring at her phone. All of them. I tried to book an Uber to my apartment, and the account is suspended. My landlord just texted me. He says the automatic transfer for rent bounced. Mark, I'm being evicted. Mark slammed his hand on the table, making the silverware rattle. Stop whining, Jessica. It's a temporary freeze. It's a tactic. They're trying to scare us. It's working, she hissed. Mark, she's a sterling. Do you understand what that means? They don't just sue people, they erase them. We need to leave. We need to apologize. Apologize? Mark's eyes bulged. The humiliation at the ball had fractured something in his mind. He couldn't accept that the woman he had treated like a servant was actually a queen. His ego wouldn't allow it. I built that company. Vance Tech is me. She can't just take it. There are laws. He pulled a small silver USB drive from his pocket. He stared at it like it was the Holy Grail. What is that? Jessica asked. My insurance policy. Mark grinned, a manic, desperate look in his eyes. Mina thinks she's smart. She thinks she can just lock me out. I knew the merger was coming. Last week I made a backup of the source code for the Titan protocol, our unreleased cybersecurity flagship. It's the only thing the Alden Group actually wanted. Jessica's eyes widened. You stole the source code, Mark. That's corporate espionage. That's prison time. It's my code, Mark snapped. I wrote the core architecture. If I can't have the company, I'll sell the engine. I know a guy, Viktor Volkov. He runs a rival firm in Eastern Europe. He's been trying to headhunt me for years. He'll pay $10 million for this drive cash, no questions asked. $10 million? Jessica perked up. The fear in her eyes was momentarily replaced by greed. Are you sure? Dead sure. We sell it tonight. We take the first flight to the Caymans tomorrow. We'll be drinking margaritas while Mina tries to run a company with no product. Mark grabbed his phone. He had to use a burner app because he suspected his main line was monitored. He dialed a number he had memorized long ago. Victor, Mark said, his voice trembling slightly. It's Vance. I'm ready to talk. Yes, the Titan Protocol. I have it. Tonight. 10 million. Meet me at the docks. Warehouse 4B. 1 hour. He hung up. He looked at Jessica. We're back in the game. Jessica looked at the USB drive. She bit her lip. She wasn't thinking about we. She was thinking about me. If Mark sold the drive, he would be a fugitive. But if she helped him, she would be an accomplice. But then she remembered Mina's face, the cold, dismissive way she had called her a nobody. The anger flared up again. Let's do it, Jessica said. Let's make her pay. The Seattle docks were a maze of shipping containers and shadows. Fog rolled off the water, obscuring the moonlight. It was the kind of place where bad decisions turned into fatal ones. Mark parked the rental car, a beat-up sedan he had paid cash for, behind a stack of crates. He and Jessica walked toward Warehouse 4B. The wind howled through the metal structures. I don't like this, Jessica whispered, her heels clicking loudly on the pavement. It's too quiet. Relax, Mark hissed. Victor is a professional. He wants the code. They reached the sliding metal door of the warehouse. It was slightly ajar. Mark pushed it open. Inside, the space was vast and empty, save for a single black SUV parked in the center, its headlights off. A man stood leaning against the hood. He was large, wearing a leather trench coat. Victor, Mark called out, his voice echoing. The lights of the warehouse suddenly slammed on, blindingly bright floodlights from the rafters. Mark and Jessica threw their hands up to shield their eyes. Not quite, a smooth voice answered. The man at the car stepped aside. It wasn't Victor. It was Sebastian Cole, the Sterling family lawyer, and he wasn't alone. From the shadows of the shipping containers, figures emerged, not thugs but federal agents. Their jackets had the bright yellow letters FBI. Mark froze. He clutched the USB drive in his pocket. Mr. Vance, Sebastian said, walking forward with a polite smile. And Ms. Thorne, so nice of you to join us. What is this? Mark stammered. Where is Volkov? Mr. Volkov is currently in a holding cell in Interpol's headquarters, Sebastian explained pleasantly. Did you really think the Sterlings don't monitor the communications of our competitors? We knew you called him before you even hung up the phone. Mina stepped out from behind the SUV. She wasn't wearing the ball gown anymore. She was dressed in a sharp white power suit, immaculate and terrifying. She looked at Mark with a mixture of boredom and pity. You walked right into it, Mark, Mina said. I knew you were arrogant. I knew you felt entitled to your work. I just needed you to commit the crime. I didn't do anything, Mark yelled, backing away. This is a setup. Possession of stolen trade secrets, an FBI agent said, stepping forward. Attempt to sell proprietary technology to a foreign entity. Conspiracy to commit wire fraud. I didn't sell it yet, Mark screamed. He pulled the USB drive out and threw it on the ground. Look, I don't have it. You can't prove anything. Mina laughed. She walked over and picked up the drive. Oh, Mark, she sighed. We didn't need you to sell it. We just needed you to take it. The moment you plugged this drive into the server at the office to copy the files, our security system flagged it. We let you download it. We let you walk out the door. We let you call Victor. She took a step closer. Because firing you wasn't enough, she whispered, her eyes cold as ice. Taking your money wasn't enough. I needed to make sure you could never, ever hurt anyone again. A felony conviction does that quite nicely. Mark looked around. The agents were closing in. The walls were closing in. He turned to Jessica. Tell them, he shrieked. Tell them you made me do it. You said we needed the money. Jessica gasped, stepping back. Me, you dragged me here. I told you not to do it. She's an accomplice, Mark yelled at the FBI agents, pointing a shaking finger at his mistress. She drove the car. She knew everything. Arrest her too. Jessica looked at Mark with pure horror. The man she had thought was her ticket to the high life was now trying to drag her down to hell with him. You coward, Jessica spat. Mina watched the lovers turn on each other with a satisfied nod. Officers, Mina said calmly. "They're all yours." The agents moved in. Handcuffs clicked. Mark Vance. The man who thought he was a king was shoved against the hood of the car, his rights being read to him in a monotone voice. Jessica was sobbing as she was cuffed, pleading with Sebastian Cole for a deal. As they were dragged toward the police vehicles, Mark twisted his head around to look at Mina. "Why?" he screamed, tears finally mixing with the rain on his face. "Why did you stay for 4 years if you could do this? Why did you let me treat you like that?" Mina signaled for the agents to pause. She walked up to Mark one last time. "Because my father told me that to truly understand the character of a man you must give him power over you," Mina said softly. "I gave you power, Mark. I gave you my devotion, my silence, and my support, and you used it to break me." She leaned in close. "I stayed to see if you were worth saving," she whispered. "You weren't." She nodded to the agents. "Take him away." Mina stood in the empty warehouse as the sirens faded into the night. Sebastian Cole closed his briefcase. "A clean sweep, Ms. Sterling," Sebastian said. "The media is already running the story. Tech CEO arrested for espionage. The stock price will tank by morning, allowing us to buy back the remaining shares for pennies on the dollar. You'll own 100% of the company by noon." "Excellent," Mina said. She didn't look happy. She just looked tired. "The car is waiting, ma'am," Sebastian said. "Your grandmother is expecting you in the Hamptons. She wants to discuss the restructuring." Mina turned to leave but stopped. She looked at the spot where Mark had stood. "Sebastian." "Yes, ma'am." "Send flowers to Jessica's cell," Mina said. Sebastian raised an eyebrow. "Flowers? May I ask why?" "Send her a bouquet of dead roses," Mina said, turning toward the door. "With a card that says, 'He was never yours. He was just your turn.'" 3 years had passed since the night of the red wine and the rain. 3 years since the name Vance Tech had been scrubbed from the city skyline, replaced by the gleaming silver letters of Sterling Cybernetics. The boardroom on the 50th floor was silent, save for the hum of the climate control and the soft scratch of a fountain pen. Mina Sterling sat at the head of the table. The table itself was a slab of black obsidian long enough to seat 20 people. Today it seated 12 of the most powerful tech investors in the Western Hemisphere. They were all looking at Mina. She wasn't the woman in the beige dress anymore. That woman had been Ghost. The woman sitting here now was a force of nature. She wore a tailored suit of midnight blue velvet, the fabric absorbing the light, while a single diamond brooch, the sterling lion, glittered on her lapel. Her hair was cut into a sharp, asymmetrical bob that framed her face, highlighting cheekbones that seemed to have sharpened with her rise to power. "The offer from the Tokyo conglomerate is generous," Mina said, her voice low but carrying effortlessly to the back of the room. She didn't look at her notes. She knew the numbers by heart. "But if we accept their liquidity injection, we compromise our encryption standards. We sell our soul for a quarterly bonus." "Mina," grumbled Arthur Penn, a board member who had been a loyalist to her ex-husband Mark until the day the checks stopped clearing. "We are talking about $2 billion. The shareholders will revolt if we walk away." Mina turned her gaze on him. It was a calm, heavy look that made Arthur loosen his tie. "The shareholders trust me, Arthur," she said, "because in the last 36 months I have delivered them a 400% return. I dissolved Mark's reckless Titan protocol and replaced it with the Aegis Shield. We are not just a tech company anymore. We are the global standard for digital safety. If Tokyo wants in, they play by my rules. Or they don't play at all." She closed the leather folder in front of her. "The motion to reject the buyout is passed. Meeting adjourned." The room exhaled. The executives gathered their things, murmuring in mixture of fear and admiration. They knew better than to argue. Mina Sterling didn't lose. As the room cleared, a man approached her from the side door. He was tall, with salt and pepper hair and a kind, weathered face. This was Julian Sterling, her distant cousin, and the chief operating officer she had brought in to help clean up Mark's mess. Unlike Mark, who had needed to be the loudest voice in the room, Julian was content to be the quietest. "You terrified them," Julian said, a small smile playing on his lips as he handed her a bottle of sparkling water. "I led them," Mina corrected, taking a sip. "There's a difference. Mark used to terrify them with tantrums. I rely on competence." Speaking of Mark, Julian's smile faded. He lowered his voice, glancing at the open door. Security called up from the lobby. Protocol 0 was triggered at the front desk. Mina's hand froze halfway to her lips. Protocol 0. It was the code for a specific blacklisted individual attempting to enter the premises. "He's here?" Mina asked. Her heart didn't race. She didn't feel fear. She felt a cold, hard curiosity. "He was released from federal prison 72 hours ago," Julian confirmed. "He's been down there for 20 minutes. He's refusing to leave until he sees you. The guards were going to remove him, but he claims he has an appointment." "He doesn't have an appointment," Mina said. She walked to the floor-to-ceiling window, looking down at the ant-sized cars on the street below. "But let him up." "Mina," Julian warned, stepping closer. "You don't need to do this. He's a felon. He's desperate. Let me handle it. I'll have him banned from the block." "No." Mina turned back, her blue eyes icy. "If I send him away, he'll think I'm afraid. He'll think I'm still the girl hiding in the pantry while he screams about his dry cleaning. I need to finish this, Julian. Send him up." Julian nodded slowly. "I'll be right outside the door, with the team." "Give us 10 minutes, Mina said. "And Julian, make sure the blinds are open. I want plenty of light." Done. 5 minutes later, the heavy oak doors creaked open. Mina sat behind the massive mahogany desk that used to belong to Mark. She didn't stand. She didn't smile. She just watched. Mark Vance stepped into the office. The transformation was shocking. The man who had once worn $3,000 custom suits and scolded waiters for the wrong vintage of wine was gone. In his place stood a man who looked like he had been hollowed out. He was thin or gaunt, his skin possessing the grayish pallor of someone who hadn't seen enough sun in years. He wore a cheap, ill-fitting gray suit that looked like it had been bought at a second-hand store. His shoes were scuffed, but it was his eyes that held the most damage. The arrogance was gone, replaced by a darting, nervous energy. He stopped in the center of the plush Persian rug, clutching a manila envelope. He looked around the office, his old office, with a hunger that was painful to watch. He looked at the updated art on the walls, the modern furniture, and finally at the woman sitting in the chair he used to think was his throne. "Mina," he croaked. His voice was raspy, unused to boardroom acoustics. "Mark," Mina replied. Her tone was polite, distant. The way one speaks to a delivery driver who has arrived at the wrong house. "You look different." "Prison does that," Mark said, attempting a smile that faltered instantly. "The food isn't exactly St. Regis catering." He waited for her to laugh or to offer sympathy. Mina did neither. She just tapped her finger on the desk. "You have 5 minutes, Mark. Why are you here?" Mark swallowed hard. He took a step forward, then stopped when he saw Mina's expression harden. "I came to apologize," he said, shifting his weight. "I had 3 years to think, Mina. 3 years in a 6x8 cell. I replayed everything in my head, the way I treated you, the mistress, the way I tried to sell the code. I was out of my mind. Stress, the pressure of the company, it broke me." "You weren't broken, Mark," Mina said softly. "You were just revealed. But go on." "I want to make it right," Mark said, his voice gaining a little strength. "I know I can't be CEO again. I know that ship has sailed. But I have ideas, Elle. I have so many ideas. I wrote them down." He held up the manila envelope with trembling hands. "The industry is stagnant. You need a visionary. I can be a consultant. I can work from the basement. I don't care about the title. I just want to help build this back up." Mina stared at him. The delusion was breathtaking. Even after everything, he still believed he was the sun around which the world revolved. He truly believed the company was failing without him. "You want to help build it back up?" Mina asked. "Mark, have you looked at the stock ticker today?" Mark blinked. I haven't had access to a terminal." Mina picked up a remote and clicked a button. The massive screen on the wall behind her flared to life. It displayed a live graph of Sterling Cybernetics' performance over the last 3 years. The line was a steep green ascent, climbing steadily without a single dip. "When you were CEO," Mina said, reciting the data from memory, "Vance Tech shares traded at $42. Today, under my leadership, they are trading at 186. We have acquired 3 of our largest competitors. We are debt-free. And we did it without stealing code from Russians." Mark stared at the screen, his mouth slightly open. The numbers didn't lie. She hadn't just maintained his legacy. She had buried it under a mountain of success. "I didn't need your vision, Mark," Mina continued, her voice cutting like a scalpel. "I needed you out of the way. You were the bottleneck." Mark slumped. The wind went out of his sails completely. The visionary consultant persona vanished, leaving only a desperate ex-convict. "I can't get a job," he whispered, staring at the floor. "I'm blacklisted. Everywhere. I applied at startups. I applied at repair shops. I even applied at a high school to teach computer science. The moment they run my background check, it's over. I have $40 to my name, Mina. I'm sleeping at a halfway house on 5th Street. "I know," Mina said. Mark looked up confused. "You know." "I own the building," Mina said simply. "The Sterling Foundation bought the shelter last year to renovate it. I know exactly where you are sleeping." A strange look crossed Mark's face, a mixture of shame and sudden desperate hope. "Then, you've been watching me?" Mark asked. He took a step closer, his eyes wet. "My lawyer, the one who showed up out of nowhere. The expensive one. He got my sentence reduced from 10 years to 3. He said a benefactor paid the fees. It was you, wasn't it?" Mina didn't deny it. "Yes, I paid for your defense." Mark let out a choked sob. He fell to his knees. It was a pathetic theatrical gesture, but it was real. He reached out as if to grab the hem of her desk. "I knew it," he wept. "You still love me. After everything, you couldn't bear to see me rot in there for a decade. You saved me, Mina. You still care." Mina stood up. The sound of her chair sliding back was sharp in the quiet room. She walked around the desk, her heels clicking on the hardwood. She stopped 3 feet from where he knelt. "Stand up, Mark," she commanded. "You're embarrassing yourself." He scrambled to his feet, wiping his eyes, a hopeful smile trembling on his lips. "I'm sorry, Elle. I can change. If you give me a chance, I can be the husband you deserved. We can start over. Jessica is gone. She left me the second the money froze. She never visited me once. It's always been you." Mina looked at him with an expression of profound pity. Not the warm pity of compassion, but the cold pity one feels for a dying animal. "You think I paid for your lawyer because I loved you?" she asked. "Why else?" Mark pleaded. "Why spend $1 million on a man who hurt you?" "Because 10 years was too long," Mina said. Mark frowned. "What?" Mina took a step closer, invading his personal space, forcing him to look into her eyes. "If you stayed in prison for 10 years, she said, her voice dropping to a whisper, "you would have forgotten the world. You would have created a fantasy in your head where you were the victim. You would have blamed me, blamed the system, and lived in ignorance." She gestured to the window, to the city, to the luxury surrounding them. "I wanted you out here, Mark. I wanted you to walk the streets of Seattle and see my name on every building. I wanted you to open a newspaper and read about my record-breaking profits. I wanted you to apply for jobs and get rejected because my reputation is so sterling that yours looks like dirt by comparison." Mark recoiled as if she had slapped him. "I didn't save you out of mercy," Mina said, her voice hard as diamond. "I saved you out of spite. I wanted you to witness my rise. I wanted you to starve in the shadow of the empire you told me I was too stupid to understand." Mark stared at her, horror dawning in his eyes. He realized then that the woman he had married, the quiet, submissive, invisible wife, was truly dead. The woman standing in front of him was a titan, and she was cruel. That's monstrous," Mark whispered. "No," Mina corrected him. "That's justice. You tried to erase me, Mark. You called me a nobody, so I made sure that for the rest of your life you will be nothing but a spectator to my life. You are the nobody now." The silence that followed was deafening. Mark looked at the door, then back at Mina. He realized there was no job, no reconciliation, no money. There was only the exit. "What about Jessica?" Mark asked bitterly, trying to land one last hurt. "Did you destroy her too?" Mina smiled. "I didn't have to. I saw her last week, actually. She's working as a hostess at a dive bar in Pioneer Square. She tried to serve me a drink. She spilled it." Mina checked her watch. "Your 5 minutes are up." She turned her back on him and walked to the window. "Leo," she called out, not raising her voice, knowing the intercom was on. The side door opened instantly. Julian walked in, followed by 2 large security officers. "Escort Mr. Vance from the building," Julian said calmly. He looked at Mark with a mixture of distaste and boredom. "And make sure he returns his visitor badge. Those cost $2. Mark Vance looked at Mina's back one last time. He wanted to scream, to curse her, to break something. But he had no power here. He was a ghost haunting a castle that wasn't his. "You'll be lonely." Mark spat out a final desperate curse. "It's cold at the top, Mina. You'll die alone with your money." Mina didn't turn around, but she reached out her hand, and Julian, without hesitation, stepped forward and took it. He interlaced his fingers with hers, a gesture of easy, solid intimacy that Mark had never been capable of. "I'm not alone, Mark," Mina said to the glass reflection. "I have a partner. A real one." The security guards took Mark by the arms. He didn't fight. He let them drag him out, his cheap shoes squeaking on the polished floor. As the doors closed, silencing his presence forever, Mina finally let out a breath. She squeezed Julian's hand. "Are you okay?" Julian asked softly. Mina turned to him. The ice in her eyes melted, replaced by a warmth reserved only for him. "I'm better than okay," she said. "I'm free." "Good," Julian smiled. "Because we have a plane to catch. Paris. The Fashion Week Gala. You promised you'd wear the red dress." Mina laughed. It was a sound of pure joy. "The red dress it is." She grabbed her purse, cast one last look at the empty chair where Mark had sat, and flipped the light switch. The office went dark, leaving the past in the shadows while she walked out into the light. And that, my friends, is why you never judge a book by its cover or a wife by her silence. Mark and Jessica learned the hard way that when you push a nobody too far, you might just find out she's the one holding all the cards. Mina didn't just get revenge. She got total victory, proving that the best payback isn't screaming, it's succeeding while your enemies watch from the sidelines. What did you think of Mina's final punishment for Mark? Was it too cruel to let him out just to watch her win, or was it exactly what he deserved? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single one. If you enjoyed this story of justice and betrayal, please smash that like button. It really helps the channel grow. And don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell notification so you never miss a new story. We have a shocking tale coming up next week about a prince who rejected his bride until he saw her scars. You won't want to miss it. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.